Manani, good evening, Dimalang, and welcome to episode 178 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zama Khumalo. It's the Monday edition of the show. It's the Monday after Christmas. It's actually that time of the year where you don't quite know which day is which, right? I mean, oftentimes in December after Christmas, you don't know where you're coming, you're going. All you know is you're resting the whole time. You're barely doing anything. You're not opening any emails. You are, of course, tuned into your favorite property podcast and probably watching with your friends and family. Well, we do hope that you've had a great Christmas, a very safe Christmas. We're seeing an increase in terms of the COVID-19 numbers. So we do hope that wherever you are with friends and family, you're staying safe and you're still exercising a lot of caution. I know that President Ramaphosa will be addressing the nation at 8 p.m. this evening. So we will be getting the latest update to see whether we're going to be going up a level or if we should be expecting any more restrictions. And if anything, there's only so much the president can do or say. It really is our responsibility to make sure that we take care of ourselves and also our family. And without any more delay, I certainly want to get into this evening's competition. I do hope that you're watching with those 4 friends and family members, and you form that great team in order to be able to participate in questions for the champions. That's, of course, the competition that we're running throughout the festive season with the finale coming up later this week, as we will be giving away 15,000 rands. So that's certainly something that you do not want to miss out on. I will be asking the questions for the champions later on in the show, so do stay tuned. We love hearing from you. Remember that these questions were based on last week. Was it Thursday's show? See, so many holidays, you actually forget which day is which. So the questions are going to be based on the Thursday show that we had last week. So you do have something to look forward to later on in the show. But something that I know that a lot of people want to get a better sense of as we are slowly trying to, plan for 2021, even though there's so much uncertainty around, is to look at the 3 top tips for investing in property in 2021. I know that there are quite a number of property investors who either want to expand their property portfolio. There are people who are now looking to, add that first investment property, or even just get their foot in the property ladder. They've been watching the show. They've certainly been hearing a lot of what's been said about the state of the property market, and they're now ready to, dip their feet in. All I can say is that it can be very contagious. When the property bug has bitten, you want to be ready. You want to be able to take advantage of the opportunity. But you also want to make sure that you're cautious, because I think one thing we don't want, certainly in 2021, that's probably going to be even more uncertain than what 2020 has been, is to make the wrong financial decisions, because property is a financial decision. And it's a very long-term financial decision. So in this evening's conversation, we really are going to be looking at what are some of the things that you need to be thinking of, especially when it comes to investing in property in 2021. We've brought on somebody who needs no introduction to the Private Property Podcast. We've had him a number of times, and I'm sure we're going to continue having him in the new year, and that's Miguel Martins, who's a portfolio manager for investors at Absa Home Loans. Miguel, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi there, Zama. So good to see you, and great to see you just after the Christmas weekend and just before New Year's. It's a great week to be sitting back and thinking hard about what 2021 is going to bring us and what we're going to do with opportunities that come our way. So thanks so much for inviting me onto your last couple shows of 2020.
It's only a pleasure, Miguel. I think it is really one of those periods where a lot of us are taking stock of the year that was. Kind of assessing some of the things that went right, what went wrong. Also just trying to think through the trauma that was lockdown, right? Because I think we mustn't take it for granted that was actually a very traumatic event that I think we all collectively went through, with some people having lost some loved ones, and now almost trying to map out what you may want to do in the new year and trying to just piece together, pieces for some of the things that you want to tick off on your list for 2021. And I know that one of the things, especially for viewers who are, viewers of the Private Property Podcast, of course, one of the big things is ticking off property and making sure that we save time, we save money, we're as efficient as possible, and also just put in those right systems, because I think sometimes people take advantage of just how many systems you might just need to put in there in order for things to go on autopilot. Now, if we essentially just look at the first top tip, Miguel, that you'd give to viewers at home who are looking at investing in property in the new year, what would be your sort of big tip, the first tip that you give them that they should start thinking about, planning for, and almost trying to, do bullet points of this is what this also looks like? I see Semi Mahlatse, Danelle Scholz also watching us, sending us very great messages. It's very great to see some of the Top Fan Gang members also watching. I know you've gotten your friends and families to tune in and also watch. Satan Tombeni also saying good fellow, what's this evening, fellow investors. So the font is very small on my screen, but of course we're keeping the conversation going down here below. So Miguel, that first tip that you would give our viewers at home. I know that you've got a lot of fans and they're now watching. So what would be that first tip that you'd give them at home?
Yeah. So Zama, the first of the three tips is invest in yourself. And I think I might have said this before in previous conversations. And at this time of year, it's such a great, we're in that week in between where we don't have too many commitments, where we can escape, grab a book. There's so many books out there, read, even if it's going back to the classics, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, go back to some principles. There's a couple South African authors who've put out some great books in the last 6 months, 12 months that are very relevant. Invest in yourself. Start to understand the areas you want to get into. Even if you are an experienced investor, you as an investor, you're always learning. You're always learning, whether it's about the tax implications, which is a bit too much for the first-time investor, but eventually you get used to it. But definitely invest in yourself. And maybe two specific places or sources that I go to. And you've also had these on your show as well, is the likes of TPN and the South African Property Investors Network. And I mention them specifically because we brought them in to partner with Absa. So with Absa and with SAPN in the new year, it hasn't been launched yet, with all our investor home loan customers, we will be offering them a 6-month free membership with SAPN. And that's something we're going to launch in the new year, probably in the 3rd or 4th month of the year. But and with that, it's just to Mr. SAPN or the South African Property Investors Network with Andrew Walker. It's just such a great place to find and source all sorts of information, and especially find other investors. And of course, the likes of TPN, great place to do credit checks, to source investor reports for particular areas, etc. If you haven't heard of these, this is a great time tomorrow morning, tonight, to get onto your phone, onto your tablet, and go and check out TPN and SAPN and see what they have to offer you, and check out when next they're having an event early next year to understand what they offer. So really invest in yourself, and I would start with those two, or otherwise just a great book in the sun. With I'm not sure if after tonight's a message from the president, if it's going to be a nice soft drink or an alcoholic drink next to you, but definitely take in some good reading the next couple of days.
Well, you know what, Miguel, I hope people who are regular drinkers would have stocked up. I think, if anything, we've been perpetually living in a sense of, alcohol sales will be closed with immediate effect, as people have seen previously. I've seen some people who are regular drinkers, just they've stockpiled, they've got stash that they've put away that they don't touch. That is for a rainy season, and then they just keep buying what they usually consume. So I do hope that if there are people who are like that, they do have their stash. I even saw somebody commenting earlier today saying, look, at this rate, if you were a drinker and you haven't maybe even turned your kids' room into a salad just so you can just pack everything in there, then you're not serious about drinking. But I think, I actually love that first tip, Miguel, because on one level, so many people say it so often, and in another, it's one of those things you can't say enough of. right? Because investing in yourself comes in sort of different shapes and forms and at different levels. I myself am, relatively seasoned when it comes to property investment, and I still find different ways of constantly investing in myself, investing in my knowledge where property is concerned. Whether it's, going ahead and going and doing a master's degree because you want to have that intricate understanding, or perhaps not doing that, because I think we also need to realize that learning and getting to know a lot about a particular thing isn't just in university, but there are different places where you can access information and access knowledge. So whichever way it looks like for you, especially when you've identified what you want to do in property or what your property goals are. Because if perhaps you want to have 2-3 properties, maybe not go and do a master's. If you know that one day you also want to be building big developments and you're starting now with the residential units, you're starting now with managing your own tenants. At some point, perhaps you want to read a rental book that has over 1,000 units on there. Then perhaps you can put in whether it's a varsity short course or whatever the case is. So there's so many different places that you can always go to find knowledge, especially property knowledge, that's in line with what your goals are. So this week, as we all sort of collectively start thinking through our goal list and what we want to be doing, and if property is on there, that's certainly something to put on your on your list, and looking just at what does investing in yourself where property is concerned essentially look like. Because I think what I might suggest, or the plan that I have for myself, or even the plan that Miguel has for himself. Miguel is quite a seasoned investor himself. That may not be maybe suitable for somebody else. So you also need to just take an honest account of, this is where I am. So this is still the knowledge that I need to just get. And then you start trying to find the different avenues. And Miguel has given us great suggestions of where you can also start. Yeah. And that's such an important starting point, because you're able to then to almost do a skills gap. I actually like, Miguel, oftentimes, I think sometimes you almost need to look at property investment the way you would your career, right? When when you have to do your almost SWOT analysis for your career, maybe it's because I do these things a lot, right? Especially this time of year in January, because that's when my birthday is. I kind of do a SWOT analysis for my life. And then you do like, what are the different goals? What are the big goals? And you also just deep dive into what needs to actually be done in order to tick them off. Because that's such an important step in property, because it's a long one.
Absolutely. And one thing many of us are doing at the end of this week, New Year's, is coming up with New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
And some of us are saying, no, 2021, it's my first property, or I want to add 2 more to the portfolio, or I want to do X, Y, and Z. And being in such an uncertain time as we're at the moment, that the way to deal with uncertainty, with risk, is purely with education. The more you know about what you're going into, and you'll never know everything. So at some point, you'll never know everything. But if you know more, you will have less risk. There's an inverse. I'm not an economist or a science, but I know there's an inverse proportion between risk and knowledge. The more knowledge you know, the less risk you take. And what to others seems like high risk, if you have the knowledge and if you know what's happening in that particular area with that particular investment type, student accommodation, for example, still very popular. But sure, I don't know too much about it personally. So for me, it would be high risk. Others who know a lot about student accommodation, what's happening with NSFAS and what's happening with student registrations in the new year, if they're in the know, those are the guys who are going to grab the opportunity as an example. So really invest in yourself, invest in the knowledge, reduce your risk.
And then, Miguel, what would then be the second tip that you'd give to our viewers at home who want to invest in property in the new year?
Absolutely. So the next one, and it's going to sound, being Miguel from the bank, and now this is where I pitch the bank. Get hold of a property finance professional. Get hold of one. Become friends with one. Start, if you can, whether it's an Absa consultant, another bank consultant, or an originator. But our consultants are trained to be able to work with clients and to tell them what's going on. There are some banks at the moment who are pulling who are taking different approaches to the property market. Some banks who are cutting back on using rental income for affordability, who require more deposits, others require less. And banks will always do that. A year ago, pre-COVID, we saw that different banks had different strategies. And getting to have that conversation, if you can grab that property finance professional, understanding what their bank is doing or what the different banks is doing, can give you such a good insight as to how you're going to finance your property. A year ago, even 6 months ago, getting finance at 100% LTV, still very possible. Still possible now, and many people are getting 100% LTVs. But different banks are treating home applications differently. If you are applying at a bank that's not your bank, you may have more difficulty than going to the bank that you with. So just having that inside scoop, and property finance professionals very happy to share with you. They'll see the investor as a prospective client, and you'll find that they'll be very open to sharing how best to approach the bank and what the requirements will be. Nothing worse than putting an application in, expecting 100% LTV. It's a great investment property, and then coming back and requiring a 10-20% deposit or something else. And rather going with eyes wide open. It's part of investing yourself. Yeah, now you are investing in one element of your power team, and that's a property finance specialist.
Miguel, one of the things I say on the show very often, it pains me to say it, only because I never quite figured myself somebody who do something like that, is property is finance. I think oftentimes we think, property is about, the bricks and mortar. It's about owning a property or owning a stand, but really it's a numbers game, and it's you being able to do the numbers and where you see the skills gap. And this is where, I love this tip, is that then you work with a property finance specialist. I work with property finance specialists, seasoned as I am. And I even do this at university. You know how to do various models and do all kinds of iterations of a model, to do all sorts of fancy things. You still want to work with somebody who specializes in this stuff, because that's their day in, day out. This is their daily bread, right? So you really want to make sure that you have the right expertise helping you on your journey. And I know I probably sound like a stuck record. This is the longest relationship a lot of us are going to find ourselves in. And Unfortunately, this is one that can potentially cost you millions of rands in the long term, right? Because if you're talking 20 years, you're talking multiple bonds, for example, it's millions of rands. So you want to make sure that you are making the right decision, you're making the right informed financial decision that's going to save you not just time, but also save you money. And that's why working with the right people, not rushing yourself or not feeling like you're rushed, especially when you don't understand something, because it's very easy to, just sign because you're thinking, look, these people know what they're talking about. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's absolutely normal to ask as many questions as possible. And it's the other party's job to answer your questions. They can't be upset or anything. Yes, Miguel, I see you want to come in.
Zama, such an important point. That finance professional, whether you're going to the bank directly or whether it's an originator, their job is to get you finance, is to make you ready for finance. So ask them the questions. And actually, if you find that they can't answer your questions sufficiently, then really reconsider whether you should invest your time with that bank consultant or with that originator and find someone else. Because like you say, you're building a relationship. This might be your first property, but consider 2, 3, 4 years down the line where you're into your second or third property, and you actually want to have built a relationship and invested in a finance professional that can give you some direction. They can't necessarily make magic, so they are at the but they do understand how the bank works. They understand how finance is working at the moment, and which banks to go to. Absolutely. But remember, you have full rights and to ask them the questions they want, and you can have a full expectation that they should give you a full answer. And even when the bank comes back to you with an answer, and if they are asking you for additional documentation and additional questions about yourself, your affordability, etc. Yes, you have to. That's credit. Just digging a bit deeper, but ask why. Give them what they want, but ask why. I find every time I do a home loan application, I learn something new, and I just have a conversation with the person. Absolutely, you're full right to do so.
We're going to go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at that final top tip for investing in property in 2021. We're also going to be taking your questions and comments. I want to hear from you. What are your 2021 property ambitions? What are some of the things that you want to be doing in the new year to your property portfolio? But before we even get to maybe 2021, what were your 2020 property achievements? So what did you actually do this year that you ticked off that you're quite proud of yourself for? Can be anything, can be big or small. You could have bought multiple properties. Perhaps you rented a property, moved out of home for the first time. I want to hear from you. We're going to go for a quick break and hear from Estee.
I'm here to announce tonight's estate agent winner. You know what to do. We all know 2020 has been a rough year, but I'm sure we all have some of our very top moments. So share them with us and tell us how you remained on top of your game. This evening's winner is Mavis Madube. Mavis says, 2020 has been a bad year to others and, on the other hand, a good year to estate agents. From a buyer's market before lockdown, it suddenly became a seller's market after lockdown. We have buyers but no stock. I used the lockdown period to read and do my logbook. We had Zoom meetings and training, so everything flowed smoothly. I completed my NFQ4 and logbook simultaneously after lockdown. I then concentrated on my clients and managed to secure 4 mandates in a very short period. Well done, Mavis. You've won yourself 1,500 Rand cash. And everyone else, you know what to do. Let us know so that you too can win 1,500 Rand cash. Have a good night.
Welcome back to the Monday edition of the Private Property Podcast. It's episode 178. So one of the great things is that off-air conversations have a way of turning into something. And Miguel has actually offered something very interesting. I'm going to hold on to it until the end of the show. So you have to watch until the very end. It's something that just came out now. So you're going to have to stay tuned to find out what it is. We hadn't planned it. We went on a break and then he's like, listen, this is actually what I want to offer to viewers at home. And this is because we've been with him throughout this whole year. Not just him, but of course also the Absa Home Loan team. And we really have been having a great time on the podcast, learning from each other and sharing knowledge with each other. And that's, if anything, is in line with what we're talking about this evening, looking at 3 top tips for investing in property in 2021. Miguel has already shared, 2 top tips that he would recommend if you're looking at property investing, or rather investing in property in the new year. The first one is to invest in yourself. There are different ways that you can do this. part of it is, of course, the podcast, perhaps joining the Sapin network, or even going on to TPN. TPN is a very great tool. I use it myself, and you really want to make sure that you get acquainted with it. It makes being a DIY landlord that much easier. And you also just learn a lot about managing tenants and the process that goes into it by using different kinds of resources when doing so. And then the second one is to work with a professional property finance specialist. You want to make sure that you're working with qualified property finance specialists. They can be from the financial institution directly. They can be a bond originator. But really, these are the people whose job it is to make sure that you get the finance that you need for the property or properties that you want to buy. So you want to make sure that in your corner you have them. Ask them as many questions as you possibly have. And sometimes you probably watch this podcast, end up coming up with even more questions. It's their job to answer them. Don't feel bad. They literally, finance people typically even love talking about that stuff. But you want to make sure that by the time you get to signing on the dotted line, you understand what you are signing on for. Now to go to your questions and comments before we go to that third final tip, I love this comment. We've got a comment here coming through from YouTube, and this one is from Unati Masondo. Nati is saying, I am so excited with Absa. Just bought 5 properties this year with Absa, all 100% bonded. Looking forward to 2021. Thanks with these informative podcasts from Private Property. Thank you so much there, Nati. Absolutely love that. I think if anything, this is testimony to what investing in yourself, making sure you watch shows like these and use other resources, and then working with a professional team. He's got his properties, financed via Absa. I'm glad that he mentioned the bank, because we've got somebody from the bank right here with us. So it's things like this that make it possible for you to grow your property portfolio as much as possible. But it doesn't just fall from the sky. It really is about getting to know a lot about what it is you want to do, and then making the decision. Because once you understand what it entails, it's easier for you to make that decision. Now, Miguel, before we share with the viewers slightly later on what you offered during our break, what's that final third tip for viewers at home who want to get into property investing in the new year?
No, fantastic. And really, I'm going to hang on to Nati's story. So, he did, what was it, 5 properties in the last year. And we hear that and we get all excited, and I want to go and copy Nati, and I want to go find 5 properties, And but what you don't hear is the story behind how Nati got to those 5 properties. We don't know if it was 5 separate deals throughout the year, if it was 5 deals in one complex, or whatever it was. But he must have been ready for those properties. And so my third hint is think slow, act fast. And it's something you said early on. Property is a long-term relationship. The time and effort it takes to invest in a property is usually the same, whether that property is a mediocre investment or whether it is a good investment.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when you invest in a property, it's some time before you can invest in that next property. So it's an investment you're making, not just in the property itself, but in your ability to be able to go on to the next property. So think slow, act fast is take your time. Look at many investment opportunities. Even put in some cheeky offers, run the numbers, but make sure that when the right property comes along, at the right price, and that you can make your numbers work really well, that you are ready to act fast, and then do and get to a point where you can do what Nati's done over time. But really take your time. Often I find that when I'm looking for an investment, it's like a drought. There's nothing out there. And
I know that.
As soon as you find something, the week afterwards, you find 2 more. And you're like, oh, it's Murphy. I don't know, Murphy's Law. I don't know what it is, but it's just the way
absolute
it works.
worst. It's the absolute worst, because when you're in that just viewing stage, that's actually when I actually agree. When you're just viewing, and because I have moments of just going on a moratorium saying, look, right now not buying, you're just keeping up with what's happening. You're seeing all these great deals. And then the moment you're like, okay, now I'm in my bullish acquisition stage, then it's just dry. And you're thinking, why didn't I just take those other ones up when they were still available?
So frustrating, but that is what it is. So when it comes through, make sure that the one you're taking is the one that you're gonna have no regrets on, and so really make sure it works. Really make sure that the numbers work, that there's a net rent at the end of the month, and it's the kind of net rent that you're looking for. That you can, if you're doing a renovation, that you can get your money out of with a refinance 6 months later, all those things depending on your strategy. But really take your time, look around, make sure that be disciplined, look for and wait for the one that ticks all the boxes or the right boxes, and then act very fast. Be right there, sign that offer to purchase, get the finance done. That's really awesome. Think slow, and especially as the year we've just gone through. I don't know if it's going to be, if next year's going to be anything like it, or worse, or better. Who knows? And that's just really think slow, check the markets, check where things are going, make sure, see what's happening with tenants and vacancies and rents. Be conservative in your numbers. So take your time, and then act fast when the opportunity arises.
And Miguel, I know you've got a bonus tip. What's that fourth bonus tip for viewers at home?
Well, the fourth bonus tip is just it's watch more of private property. Just spend more time speaking to more investors, and build that network. I have a group of investors every Tuesday evening. We sit together and we have a Zoom call or a Google Meet or whatever works. And there's 8 of us on the call, and we sit for 2 hours and we go through what each of us have been doing the last 2 weeks. And if possible, we've met twice this year. We've done the same thing face to face over dinner, and it's 8 investors around Gauteng, and build that network, build that group. It starts small, but like a snowball that starts at the top of the hill and starts rolling. Eventually, the momentum's there, and the learning comes through, etc. So yeah, look out for that.
Well, Miguel, before I let you go, I'm going to share, what you said to me during the break with our viewers at home. I think we'll find a creative way to choose the lucky winners on the call, and we'll probably announce it tomorrow. We'll share with them tomorrow. But during our call, because I wanted to share it now, because Miguel, I think the festive season has also gotten the better of him, which is fantastic. So we'll take advantage of that. Miguel has offered mentorship. I think it's 5 viewers, correct, Miguel? So mentorship of 5 viewers. So this is going to be a mentorship session. We'll iron out the details of how many sessions. Obviously, it's going to be property related, not just your life or your marriage. We're doing property mentorship, and this really is in line with. Look, Miguel, we have to say it outright, because mentorship can be many things. Many people need to.
T's and C's apply.
Exactly. So Miguel has offered, mentorship of 5 of our viewers to do property mentorship, and if anything, this really is in line with the first tip that he gave us, which is investing in yourself. And this is part of how you're able to invest in yourself. Sometimes it is, watching shows like this or being mentored by more seasoned property investors. We'll iron out the T's and C's with him, and we will, share with you at home how to go about standing a chance of winning that with Miguel. I want to thank him for opening it up to our viewers. I know that many of you have watched him. I always tease him that he now has fans. He's a celebrity on the podcast, and he has fans who tune in just for him. So you're certainly going to have an opportunity to be able to have that mentorship session with Miguel. So Miguel, thank you so much for the offer. And thank you so much for making time, always making time for us this year. It's been such a great experience having conversations with you throughout the year. Also, of course, with your other colleagues. We certainly look forward to talking more property and making sure more people are getting those properties at 100% LTV in the new year. So thank you very much for always extending yourself and being so gracious with your time with our views at home.
Well, my pleasure, Zama. And whether it's I'm not a mentor, I'm not a property coach myself. I just tend to have a lot of regular conversations with investors, and it just came to me early on as we were talking about that fourth bonus tip, that there's so much value in just investors getting together and sharing their challenges and their insights with each other. So if we can have that with no commitments that I'm going to necessarily get anyone's portfolio up and going, and I can't necessarily help with finance, but we can share our experiences and etc. And let's discuss how we do that. But thank you so much for having me on the show. I was actually so excited to when you contacted me over the weekend, say, look, come on for one last show this year. Let's knock the teeth out of 2020. It's really been great being on the show, and whether it's myself or my Absa colleagues, we we have really tried to make ourselves available to yourself, to the investors, to understand how credit works, how valuations work, how these intricacies, this black box, these workings in the back of your home application, how it all comes together. And these 30, 45-minute sessions are such high value when you got those kind of people online. And really look forward to doing more of it in the new year.
No, thank you very much, Miguel. We certainly do look forward to having you in the new year. And to you at home, we're going to share details of how to access that. As I said, it really is that great conversation. We want to have a quick chat around your portfolio. There are no guarantees that you're going to suddenly double your portfolio. We keep saying it's a long-term game. I mean, even from ourselves who are in it and have been in it for a while, there are moments where you're slightly quiet as far as acquisition in any case is concerned, and you're really just watching the portfolio grow. It's a very boring thing. I mean, property is exciting, but it's also fundamentally boring because you're doing the same thing every month. So you always want to make sure that you speak to various people who are doing all sorts of cool, fun things when it comes to growing their portfolio, even other things on the side, because you tend to find that property has a way of springing up other things on the side, which is always fantastic. Well, all the best to Miguel over the festive season. We're going to see him in the new year. We're going to go for a quick break, and after this, it will be time for questions for the champions. I do hope that you and your team are ready to walk away with that 1,500 rands. We'll be back just after this. Welcome back to episode 178 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zama. Well, it is that time of the evening where we do questions for the champions. We're going to try to wrap this up very quickly. I know President Ramaphosa will be speaking to us at 8 p.m. And of course, this one is based on the episode that we had last week, Thursday. That was the episode that looked at a detailed guide to short-term holiday rentals. I was speaking to Leanne Harrison, and I do hope that you were listening very attentively. We're going to be going through the 5 statements. We've also kept these ones true or false. And of course, the team that gets the most answers correct walks away with that 1,500 rands. And the first statement, again, it's a true or false statement, is a short-term lease generally refers to a lease that is either year to year for 5 years or anything up to 10 years, true or false. Going to repeat that one, true or false. A short-term lease generally refers to a lease that is either year to year for 5 years or anything up to 10 years, true or false. The second statement is, again, a true or false statement, and it is, when booking a holiday rental, provisions for the number of people staying in must be discussed with the leaser before check-in, true or false. I'm going to repeat that one, true or false. When booking a holiday rental, provisions for the number of people staying in must be discussed with the lessor before check-in, true or false. Remember, when you answer your questions, do use the hashtag, the name of your team, so that we're able to best track who is answering that particular question. And the third statement is, the body corporate draws up a set of house plans requested by the person buying a unit within a scheme, true or false. So that's true or false. The body corporate draws up a set of house plans requested by the person buying a unit within a scheme. And I'm sure that for many of you who live in sectional title schemes or have bought in sectional title schemes, that question is probably quite easy for you to respond to. The fourth statement, again, true or false. Always consult with an insurance broker before you start with the process of buying property for short-term lease, true or false. I'm going to repeat that one. Always consult with an insurance broker before you start with the process of buying a property for short-term lease, true or false. The last and very final one, again, true or false. In a lease agreement, the lessor is the party that pays the lessee for the use of the property, true or false. I'm going to repeat it. In a lease agreement, the lessor is the party that pays the lessee for the use of the property, true or false. And that is certainly this evening's questions for the champions here on the Private Property Podcast. All the best to all of you at home who are entering. Remember that the winners are going to be announced tomorrow on our Facebook page. So do make sure that you go on Facebook to see if your team has won or not. Well, that's it from me, Zama and the rest of the Private Property Podcast team. We're going to be back on your screen tomorrow evening for the second last episode of the Private Property Podcast for 2020. Until then, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.
I'm Rick Nidling. I'm an Olympic gold medalist and shareholder and marketing director of Estee, which recently acquired Pearl Valley Estate. I've been living in the beautiful Paul-Franschhoek Valley for the last 5 years. We are situated right in the heart of the Cape Winelands. Security is our #1 priority, and it's something we work on every day. And this has earned us the reputation of being the safest estate in Africa. The lifestyle that this area has to offer truly is country living at its best. We're just 5 minutes away from the historic town of Paarl. Paarl really is an incredible area to explore, with little gems like the Spice Route and Fairview Farms. But the biggest attraction is the excellent schools. Franschhoek, on the other hand, is a major international tourist destination, and also known as the culinary capital of South Africa, with a diverse offering for every palate and occasion. Our recent acquisition of Pearl Valley is a major game changer for us. Our residents can now enjoy a wide range of amenities unmatched anywhere else in the world. There's the world-famous Jack Nicklaus Signature Golf Course, which is consistently ranked among the top golf courses in South Africa. And there are some beautiful properties on the course. Val de Vie really is the ideal family environment. We also cater to equestrian lovers with facilities on offer for every discipline, from the 2 Hurlingham Standard Polo Fields to our state-of-the-art equestrian centers, and miles of trails. Our horses live in paradise too. Val de Vie has its own wine farm and cellars, producing award-winning wines which every resident can be proud of. I've been blessed to travel the world, but this is the place I come home to. I'm sure you can see why we call it the Valley of Life. And this is my neighborhood.